Hi, we're continuing with Module 16. We are into lessons 16.2 and 16.3. Both are involving solving quadratic equations by factoring. The only difference is in 16.2, a is equal to 1, and in 16.3, a is not equal to 1. It's some other number, all right? So it's my quadratic function, quadratic equation, written in standard form. All right, so ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. It's written in standard form. In 16.2, this a is 1, and 16.3 a is not 1. But both involve solving the quadratic equation by factoring method. All right, so when can I use factoring method? As we said, all methods cannot be used at all times. So when can I use factoring method? Only when the quadratic trinomial, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, is factorable. All right, sometimes the bx term might be missing. In that case, ax squared plus c should be factorable. Sometimes the c term might be missing, so ax squared plus bx should be factorable. Okay, so in any of those cases, that's why I said quadratic trinomial. Quadratic trinomial is I have all three terms, ax squared plus bx plus c. I have all three terms, so that's a quadratic trinomial. So that is, if that is factorable, I can use the factoring method. Or I don't have the bx term, all I have is that ax squared plus c. That should be factorable also. Okay, or the equation might have ax squared plus bx, so that should be factorable. So only then I can use the factoring method. All right, so what are the steps that are involved? So to use the factoring method, first I have to write the equation in the standard form, meaning I have to make one side equal to 0 by moving things over, or if I'm given the function equation f of x equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, I want to set the function to 0 on one side. All right, I want to make that function to be equal to 0. Then factor the quadratic trinomial. If it is ax squared plus bx plus c, if it is ax squared plus bx plus c, I want to factor that trinomial using that a times c method, which we saw in module 15, right? How to factor it. If you are not familiar with how to factor it, you need to go back and watch that video. So you are going to factor that ax squared plus bx plus c, the quadratic trinomial, using a times c method. Or if it is a quadratic binomial where your bx term is missing, which is a special case most of the time, only if it is a special case, which is difference of two squares, right? If it is difference of two squares, I could factor it as a plus b times a minus b. That also is there in lesson 15.4. You can go and watch the video how to factor a special case. Or if your c term is missing, which is of the type ax squared plus bx, I could simply factor it by pulling a GCF. All right, so then once I factor my quadratic trinomial or the quadratic binomial, I'm going to apply something called a zero product property. Okay, what is a zero product property? We will see in a bit. We're going to apply the zero product property to each of those factors that I have for my quadratic trinomial or the binomial. And then once I apply the zero product property, I will be able to solve for x. All right, so putting it in standard form, then factor your trinomial or your binomial, apply the zero product property to the factors, and solve for x. Okay, so these are the steps that are involved in solving the quadratic equation by the factoring method. These two steps we are familiar with, how to set it to 0. All you're doing is moving things around. I will show you how to do it. And we know how to factor it. If not, you need to go back to module 15 and learn all the factoring methods. All right, so we're going to be factoring, and then after we factor, we're going to apply the zero product property. So we need to know what that zero product property is. So let's write this zero product property. What is it? Zero product property. Okay, zero product property Say I'm multiplying two things. I'm multiplying two things, A times B, and my product turns out to be 0. All right. If A times B is equal to 0, all I can say about A or B is either A should have been 0 or B should have been 0 for me to get that answer to be a 0. So it only suggests that I don't know which one is 0 for sure, but I know either one of them is a 0. All right. So if A times B equal to 0, then either A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. This is zero product property. It's going to come handy while we apply this property to solve our quadratic equation. Okay, so this can be applied to the factors. So the zero product property will come handy for us while we apply it to our factors and solve for our x. All right, so let's take a problem and see how to solve our quadratic equation by factoring. Okay, so the question is, find the zeros of f of x equals x squared plus 10x plus 21. All right, so they have given us the function equation now. So we want to make that to a quadratic equation by setting the function to 0. All right, I'm trying to, whenever I'm solving for my quadratic equation, I'm solving for the x-intercepts, which is solving for x when y is 0, right? So I'm going to set y equal to 0. I'm going to make that to a 0. So I write my equation, x squared plus 10x plus 21 is equal to 0. So I set my equation to 0. This is written in standard form. So our first step is accomplished. Okay. Now I want to factor the quadratic trinomial. This is a quadratic trinomial. So I'm going to use my A times C method. So you have to go look for it in module 15. So A times C method. Quickly, if I do it, A times C is 21 and B is 10. So I want to find the two factors that will give me that 21 when I multiply them. And when I add them, it should give me the 10. So positive 7 and positive 3 will do my job. So I got the sum as 10. So I'm going to split the 10x as x squared plus 7x plus 3x plus 21 equal to 0. I'm maintaining my equation. All right. While I'm factoring the left side, I'm maintaining the equation to 0. All right. So now group it. The common factor is x. So I will have x plus 7. And I have to have x plus 7. So I pull out a 3. So my equal to 0. So my factors are x plus 7 times x plus 3 equals 0. So I started with the standard form. Now I have written it in factored form. All right, this is called factored form. Now after I have the factored form, I need to apply the zero product property. So this was step 1, putting it in standard form. Then I started my step 2 right there. I ended up with my factored form. That's ending my step 2. My step 3, I have to apply the zero product property. So I'm having two factors that are multiplying to give me a 0, right? So the zero product property says this is my A and this is my B. If A times B is equal to 0, either A is 0 or B is 0, right? So that means either x plus 7 is equal to 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0. So I've applied the zero product property. Step 4, now solve for this x. So this equation will give me x as negative 7 and this equation will give me x as negative 3. So I have two x-intercepts. X is negative 7 and x is negative 3. Okay, if I have to write that as a coordinate, this is negative 7 comma 0. This is negative 3 comma 0. Okay, x-intercept is a point on the graph, right? Okay, let's take a look at the next problem. Solve x squared plus 12x equal to negative 20. They did not give you the function equation. They just gave you a quadratic equation straight away. by factoring. They want you to solve it by factoring. So my first step is for me to put it in standard form. As you can see that negative 20 is on the right side. I need to have one side set to 0, right? So I have my equation x squared plus 12x is equal to negative 20. So I want to make that one side to a 0. So I have to add that 20, bring it over. I will have x squared plus 12x plus 20 is equal to 0. So I have written it in standard form. That's step 1. Now step 2, I want to put this in factored form, meaning I want to factor my quadratic trinomial again using a times c method. My a times c is 20 and b is 12. So that means positive 10 and positive 2 is going to give me that positive 12. Alright, it's going to give me the 20 and also the positive 12 as my sum. So I'm going to split it up as x squared plus 10x plus 2x plus 20 equal to 0. I'm maintaining my equation. Group it. X is common. I pull it out. I get x plus 10. I have to have that x plus 10. So I'm pulling out a 2 equal to 0. Now the factors are x plus 10 times x plus 2 equal to 0. Now I have accomplished my step 2, which is putting it in factored form. Now apply the zero product property. Zero product property is, this is my a, this is my b. A times b is giving me a 0. That means either a is 0 or b is 0. I've applied the zero product property. Now solve for x. Solve for x. When I solve for x, this equation will give you x as negative 10 and this equation will give you x as negative 2. So my two x-intercepts are negative 10, 0 and negative 2, 0. Alright, x-intercepts. I've solved the equation by factoring. So this is applicable only when I can factor my equation, right? So this is, I have a quadratic trinomial on one side. So we also talked about having a quadratic binomial, right? So let's take a look at this example. I have x squared minus 16 equal to 0. In this case, I have my ax squared plus bx plus c. Bx plus c. My bx term is missing. I have that ax squared plus c. As we saw in our previous video, we talked about being able to solve this equation using square roots. So I can solve this equation by square roots also. Alright. But how will I? But they are mentioned I have to solve it by factoring. So whatever method they are mentioning, you have to use that method. Alright. So they are asking me to factor it and solve it. So when I look at it, this is a binomial and it's a special case, which is difference of two perfect squares. I have a squared minus b squared, difference of two perfect squares. So my factors will be a squared minus b squared. This is my difference of two squares. So my factors will be a plus b and a minus b, right? So I'm squaring an x and I'm squaring a 4. So my factors will be x plus 4 times x minus 4 equal to 0. So it's already written in fact standard form. So step 1 is already accomplished. Step 2 is I put it in factored form. Okay, now apply zero product property. This is my a, this is my b, times it's giving me a 0. That means either x plus 4 is 0 or x minus 4 is 0. So when I solve for x, this will give me x as negative 4 and this will give me x as positive 4. So this is what we would have gotten if we used the square root method also. Say x squared minus 16 equal to 0. If I use the square root method, I should add the 16. So I get x squared equal to 16 and then I would have square rooted it. Once I square root it, I'll get x as plus or minus 4, which is what we got by factoring also. Alright, so you could use square root method, but since they asked you to use factoring, you have to do by factoring. All right. So next problem. We talked about one more kind of binomial, ax squared plus bx plus c. Now my c is missing. Both ax squared and bx are there, right? So how am I going to factor this out? The only thing can be factored is the greatest common factor. Okay, so I have 2x squared plus 24x is equal to 0. It's already written in standard form. All I can do is use the greatest common factor and factor it out. So the greatest common factor is a 2x. So all that is left is an x here plus 12 equal to 0. All right. So now I've factored it out. There is nothing more to factor there. Now my step 3 is applying the zero product property. The zero product property is applied to all the factors. So the factors are 2x and your x plus 12. So this is my a and this is my b. A times b equal to 0, right? So that means 2x is 0 or x plus 12 is equal to 0. If 2x is 0, then x has to be 0. If x plus 12 is 0, x has to be negative 12. So the two values are x equal to 0 and x equal to negative 12. All right. So these are the 4 different kind of problems that you're going to look at solving a quadratic equation by factoring. All right. So if you are not sure about factoring, you need to go to module 15 to learn all about factoring. Very important. All right. Thank you.